Hello everyone, this is Scarzig, and welcome back to another design talk. Today's video is going to be concerning Aphelios, and my idea to rework this champion. First, I want to quickly go over the issues with Aphelios' current design before I move into how my potential rework can solve some of these, or at least alleviate them a little bit. Enough time has passed now that we can see that Aphelios is very obviously too strong, but a large portion of Aphelios' power comes from his synergies with other cards rather than standalone strength. A lot of the problems with Aphelios are a function of his ability to cleanly cover a specific weakness of Targon while supplementing that region's strengths. Crescendum is a 2-mana spell that lets you summon a follower directly from your deck, with the oft overlooked secondary effect of also triggering its Nightfall ability. Crescendum was tailor-made to function with the Lunari Shadestalker, as well as the follower that released alongside Aphelios, the Sky Shadows, but instead, it's used almost exclusively for Boxtopus, since the summon effect allows you to ignore its self-damaging effect. So being able to summon such a high-powered challenger unit in Targon so early on and so easily allows what would normally be a very slow and value-oriented deck to contest the board very effectively alongside the other moon weapons, right? Gravitum for stuns, Calibrum to deal direct damage to followers. And before the release of Aphelios, Targon was still in a strong position due to its suite of healing cards, such as Star Shaping, Guiding Touch, Solari Sunforger, Zoe, and various other cards allowing for defensive options like Equinox, the Serpent, or Crescent Strike, as well as the infamous Hush, allowing Targon to survive against a wide variety of board states and win conditions. The Fangs, another card which released alongside Aphelios, provides an excellent marriage of these two classes of cards. Now, Targon did, however, struggle to directly remove threats from the board without paying a substantial cost, right? Cards like Sunburst, Falling Comet, Meteor Shower, and the Warrior were all very expensive in and of themselves, and some of them were also combined with the Invoke tax, right? You'd have to pay a little bit of extra mana just to get access to them. But now with Aphelios, Targon retains all of its previous healing and defensive utility while gaining access to direct board threats and disruption of the enemy's win condition and ability to set up the board at a much cheaper cost. Lastly, any discussion of Aphelios would be remiss to exclude mentioning Veiled Temple. It's a 4-mana landmark that after you play 2 other cards each round, refills 2 mana, not just spell mana, actually real unit mana, and it grants your strongest ally +1/+1. Now, Veiled Temple is an absurd card, to say the least, but going over that in more detail would warrant its own video. Today, I just mostly want to emphasize its synergy with Aphelios. The mana refund allows you to include moon weapons in your curve a lot easier. The permanent stat gains makes it very difficult to answer Aphelios either through him gaining the stats himself or another unit like Boxtopus becoming a very large threat and stifling your opponent's ability to develop a board. So Aphelios generating cards whose mana gets refunded means that the Targon player can do more in their turns while also giving up less card advantage to do it. In most games, after running the gauntlet of Crescendums and Gravitums and Calibrums, Invokes, and Healing, your opponent will end up with a massive board advantage and health advantage, and then somehow also have a massive card advantage as well. So with that all being said, what changes can we make to Aphelios in order to tone down his ability to solo carry games? The developers mercifully nerfed Aphelios' base HP by 1, making it slightly more difficult to safely summon him, and widening the window where he can be removed from the board efficiently, but this doesn't address his core issues. Firstly, Aphelios doesn't need to see moon weapons being cast in order to level up, so if you are able to remove him from the board, the opponent is only losing out on Aphelios' value in the moment with very little long-term detriment. in practice, there's very little difference actually between, level 1 and level 2 Aphelios, other than he shifts from being a purely backline value generating champion to being a more offensive threat due to gaining quick attack. Aphelios leveling up is for the most part a foregone conclusion due to how the deck can just prolong games considerably. The second or third Aphelios that comes into play while generating a moon weapon, of course, will be able to finally achieve the win condition and be alive when that fourth moon weapon is cast. Secondly, the normal moon weapon play pattern involves repeatedly cycling through Crescendum, Calibrum, and Gravitum, ignoring the other weapons for the most part, unless and until absolutely necessary. This defensive rotation actually results in massive board and tempo advantage for the deck. Again, you're just keeping your opponent from being very aggressive or removing your board while you're just setting up on them and scaling towards your late game. So, with that out of the way, the change to Aphelios that I suggest is that he levels up after all 5 moon weapons have been cast. Now, whether he needs to see them is up for debate, but furthermore, once a moon weapon is created by Aphelios, he can't create it again. So when he's first summoned, players will have 5 choices, and then 4, then 3, and so on. And this does multiple things. It cuts down on his massive defensive one-man army potential, where you're just, again, rotating through those 3 moon weapons over and over again. And it weakens the synergy with Boxtopus considerably without needing to nerf that unit directly. And it also increases the feeling of the fantasy of Aphelios, wielding a variety of moon weapons and planning ahead, right? Because the Crescendum and Gravitum are just so generically strong, there is really no need to plan ahead for these future situations like the developers intended with Aphelios. You're just always going to say, well, I can just take Gravitum at any given time because stunning a follower is almost always going to be useful. And at the very least, I can use it to pop a spell shield, right? So this also makes leveling up Aphelios a goal to achieve and less of a foregone conclusion. And this allows the opponent, in turn, to adapt their game plan in response to what moon weapons are remaining. Now, this might seem restrictive at first, but you have to remember that if Aphelios dies, your next copy simply restarts the cycle again, the same way that, like if Twisted Fate dies, you get to summon another Twisted Fate and cast another gold card or red card, right? So playing your next Aphelios will allow you to make use of another powerful Crescendum or Gravitum play, and you have to remember the card Gifts from Beyond exists, and by extension your additional copies of Aphelios being drawn from the deck will still allow you to gain emergency copies of moon weapons you might need in a pinch, and then these extra copies, have a little bit of a mana tax attached to them, so they feel a little bit more balanced that way. And the real icing on the cake I like about this idea is that it also opens up the moon weapons to potentially be individually balanced, as they become slightly decoupled from the current pentagonal phasing structure. They don't need to be viewed necessarily as being 2 mana equivalent in power type weapons. And of course, in practice, there is a wide disparity around how good each moon weapon actually is. So if need be, the developers are able to tone down a specific moon weapon or buff up another one, or even change their mana costs going forward if that's the case, in order to keep Aphelios balanced. Because, Aphelios is very strong right now, but who knows what's going to happen down the road where Aphelios might become weak, and this gives them another way to potentially make Aphelios a little bit stronger. So the concept here makes Aphelios healthier in the moment, allows him to maintain his strong synergies, lets him more completely fulfill his champion fantasy, marries him a little bit better to his League of Legends counterpart and his lore, and also future-proofs the design just a little bit. And as a final note, a change like this might mean that Aphelios could even be reverted back to a 3/3, and that's especially if Veiled Temple is nerfed. So yeah, that's my idea for an Aphelios rework. Let me know what you think in the comments below, or if you had any ideas about how you would change Aphelios, and I'll see you in the next video. Have a good one.